if you're taking a flashy approach, whatever's new and fun and overly social or doesn't have any real sustenance to it, then you're just going to be attracting the audience that's going to move on to the very next trendy brand thing as soon as it comes up. You're not really creating like loyal consumers.
Welcome to the Mastering E-commerce Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Eitan Koter, co-CEO of Emmy. In an era of rising acquisition costs and increased competition, this podcast is dedicated to helping you drive sales, engage customers, and build meaningful communities so you can turn passive visitors into active buyers. Now let's get started with the episode. Dani Dufresne is an Emmy Award-winning Executive Producer and agency leadership consultant with over 2 decades of experience across film, TV, commercials, and experiential events. As the founder of the Oaks Co., she leads a network of top-tier fractional production talent that helps creative agencies scale bold ideas without the overhead. Known for her visionary thinking and operational savvy, Dani also advises emerging agencies on growth, sales, and structure bridging creatives' ambitions with real-world execution. Dani, how are you? Welcome.
I'm good. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Really excited about the topic today. The video is like a main theme for us here on this podcast, and definitely marketing for merchants and brands. But before we get started, Dani, if you can think about 3 words that are most important to you and why.
I would say space and boldness, like living without fear. So boldness, space, and just water. Anytime you can be near the water or ingesting water or the sound of water.
I must say that I know you are very creative, obviously because of your background and what you do, but these 3 words we never heard in our podcast. So that's a great start. So what do you mean by space?
I think that especially we get older and we have, kids and more things and, running a company, space becomes really important and it means a lot of different things as far as like making space for yourself, making space. Like you cannot think of something new or, go to the next place unless you're making space for it.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of, whether it's physical space or like mental space is really important.
Nice. I think mental space got a lot to do with water, right? Because water is like a flow, right? You need to flow with the things. You live in some kind of homeostasis, right? With your environment and with yourself, primarily, right? And if you can have like bold actions on the way, that's a great place to be, right? And bold, you mean like on your creatives, on your marketing side, or you meant other things as well?
Just be bold in everything you do. So whether that's, again, like physically, don't be afraid to be bold. I mean, I try to never like make decisions out of fear. So it's all about like being bold, whether that's, bold can mean a lot of different things. It can mean impactful. It can mean vibrant. It can mean, rich. So I think it's more of just like living within that space versus I see like boldness as the opposite of like a space of fear.
Got it. Wow. Love it. Very deep. So thank you very much for sharing this. And, video is like everywhere. According to Cisco, like more than 82% of the worldwide internet traffic is already video, right? So, but there are so many types of videos and please share with us, what do you see? I know you started in the real, highly production type of content. What is the type of services you provide today? What do you see around video that is really interesting these days?
I think that everything is video. Everything has to have a video element. You're even seeing like, GIFs and things made from stills because it feels like it needs to have movement. And for a long time there, it was really important because it was necessary to draw attention. But I feel like people are getting a little overwhelmed with the constant pop-ups and constant video and constant like, just overwhelming amount of everything that's being thrown at them every day, especially the way that like tracking has come. And what I have seen a lot more recently is focus on storytelling through video, and stills, and really more of like focusing how you tell your brand story or how you tell even the story of your consumer. Because if you think about it, as a brand, you have your key consumers, your key, like the lifestyle that you represent. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there for storytelling and connection to build community for your brand. And that is where I am seeing things headed. I think that, there's been a lot of having to throw everything at the wall and throw just like we need a piece of content for every single bucket that you could put it in. But then you're really diluting your brand message and you're really overwhelming your audience as well. So they're not really able to follow your brand story. I think there's a difference between the brands that are wanting to create, authenticity, but also like brand loyalty and a real community versus the ones that are just there to sell as much as possible for a short amount of time as possible. And then they don't really care after that. Like, because I think if you look at video or any piece of media content and the strategy of how you're creating it and where you're putting it and how you're producing it, if you're taking a flashy approach, the like whatever's new and fun and, overly social or, just doesn't have any real sustenance to it, then you're just going to be attracting the audience that's going to move on to the very next trendy brand thing as soon as it comes up. You're not really creating like loyal consumers. And I think that we're starting to see that as social engagement has gone down, as people are wanting to even really go away from influencers so much and to focus on like, what can I know more about this story? How can I focus on what I'm spending and like caring more about it? So I'm seeing a lot of stuff trending that way. We do everything from photo shoots, events, broadcast commercials, all of that stuff. And we are starting to see a lot more events too, a lot more experiential stuff where you want to get products in people's hands and not just influencers, into real people's hands who are going to go out there and be that representative for your brand.
Yeah. So there was a lot of things that you've highlighted here. I think the first one is that it's already very, very competitive, right? I mean, it's not enough to have just one video here and there. This will not create any real effect, right? So, and then you mentioned storytelling, and I think it's so true because you need to find other ways to differentiate, and video should be like a more strategic approach to video planning, right? And storytelling, not just that specific video and how to craft storytelling around that specific video, but how to get a storytelling about, let's say, your next quarter content planning, right? And it really depends on the life cycle of the company, where you are. I mean, you're a new brand just trying to build relationship, or your customers are already in consideration mode, or they're in decision mode, or different styles of video to different phases of the marketing life cycle stages of the brands. But what do you see are some of the best practices in terms of content planning, like the strategy behind storytelling? These are the areas that I think are very, very important for differentiation these days, because yes, we are overwhelmed with a lot of content, and this just makes differentiation more interesting and more powerful for those who do it right.
I think that there's this, again, like I was saying, we were having to throw so much out there that a lot of times brands were having to really stretch their marketing budget because they thought just because you could track a set of eyes from a click all the way through everything, that was the important data to follow, that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it does on paper to a certain extent. But in the end, you're really not tracking someone's internet searches, and tracking where they're going isn't telling you that much about them. And I think that there's a need to differentiate yourself as a brand from this, like something that's being sold in TikTok shop that there's probably a bunch of fake versions of, to like, what is yours? What makes your brand you? And there's so many different ways to do that. But I think the number one thing that I think that the way to use storytelling, at least that I think that works the best, is to embrace media and your media plan as early on in the process as possible. Too often I see really amazing campaigns that just fall flat because they haven't thought out the media plan, or they haven't pushed the media plan to new places while they were in creative ideation. So you can really customize creative assets and video assets for exactly how people are going to be engaging with that thing to an insane degree. I mean, I've done timed billboards all up and down the same street, so it's pointing people places. I've done all really interesting things that I think that I don't know if it's that creatives aren't wanting to get into that. They think it's a different thing. I think not enough creatives understand programmatic media and a lot of ways that media can work for them. And it just sort of is always left up to the brand or, a brand rep to the last minute. And that is something I would love to see change to where they're like, oh, well, we just, as long as we create something that is, 9 by 16 and they could put it someplace, it'll work. And that's not the only way to approach it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we always have this like probably the most exciting example is like the Red Bull, right? So just it's an energy drink company, it's a media house. I mean, it's just building the whole foundations on content, right? And but then also the content that they create is like totally supporting their company culture, right? And values. Not just the product. You don't see any products there, right?
What I want to see more of is I want to see brands help it. Like if you're a athletic company, if you're a North Face, get your audience off their phones and laptops and get them outside. Promote the lifestyle that you want your consumers, that you represent for your consumers, whether that be out at the beach or like Corona does. Like you think about and then go meet them there. Partner with local, local state clubs or local organizations in communities that represent what you are. I think we've stepped so far away from consumer mapping and remembering who our audience is just because someone at a media company can give you data that makes you buy more of what they are selling you does not mean that that data is being interpreted correctly. And I think that has been a big mistake across the board for a lot of younger brands. And I think we are seeing that start to change. And I think that that is the next step. There you're seeing everything kind of go back to a slower culture where, we want that community, we want to embrace it. And people are leaving social for like Facebook groups because, or WhatsApp groups because they want to have more community. I think there's a huge opportunity there for brands to tap into that, especially up and coming brands who can tap into their brand story and their audience at the same time.
Yeah. So when you start working with a new brand and company that obviously on every side their budgets are limited, right? And what's the decision making process? What are the major questions that you ask, before you craft the right strategy and then obviously craft into
I like to look at marketing budget overall and say like, well, what is your media budget? Because if you're already holding this chunk of money that you're going to go buy something, but we're not looking at it as a whole, right? Like how can you be taking some of those dollars and through partnerships make that money go further organically, but still getting a ton of good content. I think that too often that's like segmented. Just because you can make something with your phone doesn't mean that every piece of content should be made very cheaply. I think we are starting to see people care about rich storytelling and visual beauty even in their social content again. You're seeing a lot of influencers start to go that way on the creative side where they're making sure that everything that they're pushing is beautiful. I really like to talk about what's the goal, right? Like, what is the goal and how are you feeding that back, right? It's not, how many likes or say, it's not that kind of engagement anymore. I think there's more practical, harder way. Like, it's more difficult to see what the ROI is a lot of times, but that's the direction you have to go. The stuff that it's like, oh, I know that we got like, millions of people shared this or like, that's not necessarily leading to sales or that's not necessarily leading to a person recommending that to someone else. I think that looking at the strategy too often, I think one of the reasons that I work directly with brands and agencies is that too often I think projects get taken to production partners and they just execute whatever it is they're being told to. They're not adding value. They're not saying, is that actually the best strategy to tell that story? Is that actually the best way to get to that goal? Or are you asking for something that you haven't already laid the groundwork for in things you already should have done that we need to take a few steps back and do that?
Mm-hmm.
And, I really love being able to do what I do with brands in this way of, I think as a consultant, I feel a lot better about being honest. Internal people are not going to tell you if an idea is bad. They're not going to raise their hand and, point out every red flag. And I think that is why your in-house team is not always the best people to execute everything for you. So we're able to really, we've done campaigns for $15,000. We've done campaigns for, $5 million. It really runs the end-to-end scale.
Yeah. And it seems that everyone wants to be everywhere. We know that like every one of those channels is becoming like a community, as you said, right? It's you need the type of expertise to know how to interact with them, how to engage with them, and those capabilities on each platform is just the functionalities are evolving like on a daily basis. What is your view in terms of omnichannel and diversification versus okay, let's decide where our ICP is. Let's start there. Let's focus. Let's build this community and grow from there.
I think that if you take the steps back to filming, to like build a more practical community instead of saying, well, we have to talk to these people here this way and these people here this way. But at the same time, those people are already being so overloaded. You're not standing out. There's something to be said for not doing something the way that everybody on that platform does it. I think that is what's going to stand out more. If you're showing up where they are in their everyday, not on their phones, that is going to make a bigger impact long term than just like it costs them nothing to like your post. It costs them nothing to, click a link, pull a cart, and then leave it to never return ever again. I'm sure your audience is very familiar with that. That is not engaging with them in the way that they are wanting to show up in the world. It's not being aspirational to them, but to their audience. I think that there's a way to bring your audience in on your storytelling, let them know what you have going on, but at the same time, help them have the life that they want to live. Now, I think that a lot of the brands that it's a harder, longer sell. So it's not necessarily something that people want to do, but at the same time, with the birth of AI or the new capabilities that AI has, that if anything is going to free up more of your budgets. Let AI do the lower hanging fruit, funnel, whatever small stuff, and focus your money on that bigger goal and on the more solid audience and community that you can build.
And this is usually just probably adding more customers or nurturing existing customers or what side of the equation or each company.
Right. So just getting one person to buy your product once and then buy something else.
Yeah, retention probably.
Is not right. Like that doesn't, you don't want influencers to say, "Yeah, everyone buy this." And then that audience is going to just go buy whatever that influencer tells them to buy next. And it may not be your product. What you want to be, I think there's opportunity to connect what makes your brand different. Even like you were saying, like Red Bull is the lifestyle or Corona has this outdoor lifestyle, and you subconsciously connect it to, like, when you see that product, you connect it to that lifestyle and that aspirational thing that you want to be or do or consume or stands for. Whether that's like Bombas Socks wants to stand for people, or gamers that want to stand for, a certain kind of product that they, live without or can't live without. I think that there's these ways to do something, and you can actually do that and then be able to, you don't have to be the cheapest. You don't have to be the flashiest. You can be you can still ask for more. Like, you can ask for the amount of money that you want because people are willing to pay it because they care about your product. They care about your brand. And right now people are having to spend less, but they're not really spending less in the dollar amount. They're just buying less, and they're okay with spending money on quality stuff. I mean, it's no different than the difference between like a Gap and a Banana Republic when they're all made at the exact same factory with the exact same stuff, but they're able to market themselves in a different way and present themselves to a different audience in a way that connects.
Yeah. So you have the product and it's like all features and unique selling points and all that. And in parallel to that, you need to have a clear identity in terms of a company culture, the vision, the founder's story, which is very, very powerful. And just combining both together into some kind of a content strategy, just make a compounding impact. And it's very, very differentiated, very, very powerful. And it doesn't have to cost too much, right? And one boost or figure out, you can find the right budget, both organically and through paid media, to support that process, right? So if I'm a brand owner, or for the brand owners out there, what are the questions they need to ask themselves before they're working with a company like the Oxco?
I think having a clear set of goals and that are realistic. Also, I think you need to have like a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year set of goals. Because really, depending on how long you've been around and what you've done previously, it may take that full 5 years to get there. So take like a brand like Carhartt, for example, right? Like they know what they stand for, and they have gone and really made sure that they have worked that branding of like, we work through generations where it's expensive because it lasts for a really long time. But they're not telling their story anymore. They're out there telling the story of the people scaling up the electricity poles to be able to work every day, or the families handing down their overalls to other, people in at their farm, and telling those stories. And I think that, so having a clear set of goals to where it's, have we told enough of our story that we can start telling our consumer story?
Mhm.
Because you need to do a certain amount of both depending on where you are. And then I think it's a matter of what lifestyle do you represent? Like, who do you represent? Is it one particular kind of person? Is it an overall audience? And how can you speak to them in a way that is most effective for whatever that goal, whatever those 1, 3, and 5-year goals are?
Yeah. And what kind of services you are providing today? Is it obviously the strategy, the content type, I mean, the production itself, the operation behind it? Please share exactly the various types of.
So we will work, let's say, sometimes we'll work directly with a smaller agency that maybe they have some top creatives and they're working with a brand. We will come in, and by being able to tap production expertise earlier on in the process, instead of waiting to the very end of the funnel where you think you have everything perfectly packaged and you're asking someone to just go execute it, we can come on earlier to help you not only know, like, can you actually do that with your budget? Is that the best way to tell that story with the money and time and resources that you have? Are there other approaches? Are there ways to stretch that budget or timeline, and really ideate around all the various ways you can show up in the marketplace, from events to, print and out of home to actual video and social, then strategize from there forward and make like a full plan. Because I think it's also thinking of, you can create multiple types of content and levels of content at every single thing that you're doing. And it's not, but you still have to plan for those, for all of those ways and for all those mediums at the very, as early as you can, to make sure that you have the best strategy. So we do that a lot with agencies or direct with brands that have their own in-house creatives, or if they have an idea and need some creative help, we have creatives that we bring on that are, we will bring on specialty creatives that, represent whatever that is. So whether it's female outdoors, people, or, men beauty products, like we have very specific Rolodex of creatives, production partners, and vendors all within those categories, so that we can get like really specific in who we're bringing on. I think too often, the reason I didn't want to start a production company is too often production companies tend to like have their niche that they do this one thing really well, and that's great. But I like to be able to solve multiple problems and bring on all of the right people to have the full plan kind of in place before you're even getting to that final production step.
Yeah, just having this open-minded and know how to craft the right solution to the right problem. And yeah, that's, I think, a great place to be. Danny, what are some of the mistakes that you see brands are making today with videos, with creatives?
I think I already addressed the media, trusting media data a little bit too much. I think that they're not embracing the data, or they're not embracing the media concept of like ideating how it's going to show up enough when they're in creative. But for some reason, they're laser focused in the data that they're interpreting while you're in creative. And I think that sometimes that is not telling you certain kinds of messaging. Everything doesn't need to be visual. You don't need to have the brand in the upper corner. You don't need to say what the product was. The people are being very oversold. And a lot of this stuff that just, I don't know that the data is always pointing back to like, yes, that means it's brand recognition. No, it just means that you were lucky and they didn't click away. Like, I think that what we want to see is like everything that you're making. Like there was a long time where every single time a Google commercial came on, you knew it was Google before you even saw the brand.
Mhm.
And I think there's a way to take that approach to everything that you do that is a much deeper connection, makes a much deeper connection with your consumer, versus just like having the logo absolutely everywhere, or having, the influencer or creator that you hire like spew the same talking point.
Got it. Got it. And so you already launched, I mean, you launched the company in 2017. It's been a while, right? So how has the market changed, since then?
Well, no one was using the term fractional when I started the company. I was working in-house at agencies for a long time, and I worked on the production company side for a while. And after being in-house at agencies for about 10 years, I knew I didn't want to start a production company, but I saw this big disconnect between the way that agencies and brands talk to each other and the way that agencies and production partners talk to each other. And I wanted to sort of help bridge that gap. And so now that people are a lot more used to fractional and bringing on teams that really are scaling with them, it's been really great. But for a long time, it was just people, oh, so you're freelance and you're just going to like sit here in the office. No, well, I don't want to waste your time or money, and I don't want my time or money like wasted. So why not help? Like, why not let us come together and we bring you the exact people that you need to just do this? And you're not having to, drag down your overhead. You can move faster. You don't have all this red tape you're having to deal with. So that's been really great. And I also think that obviously the types of content have been, going up and down. Whether that was, I was doing a ton of long form branded documentaries and branded series, 10, 15 years ago. And then everything got shorter, 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 shorter. And now it's kind of going back to that longer content. Right now, Netflix owns TV. Like our YouTube owns TV more than Netflix, right? They've taken over Netflix, YouTube has. So at this point, there should be the ability for every brand to tell their story in a longer form manner, or partner with other brands, produce a series that stands for what your consumers want to be like, but it's not all about your brand. I think there are ways to approach that where we want to be able to sit down and watch something that's longer than 30 seconds. Oh, and feel that connection to it.
I mean, there's so many examples, right? I mean, retailers, they're becoming like media companies, right? And media companies are becoming brands and selling merchandise. And it's like commerce and media are converging. This is happening, big time, both on acquisitions and very.
And influencers are realizing they don't even need the brands. They're going to start their own brand of XYZ, but they're not doing it to create a long-term brand. They're doing it to make some money and then do something else. So I think it's also, all of this is really what created fast fashion and like very cheap things. And we are starting to see people wanting to go back to quality, and quality over quantity, and having that more and getting kind of rid of that stuff. And I think that the brands that, whether it's when they're starting out or if they're making the shift now to that, are going to be the ones that are around long.
Yes. No, very, very interesting. I think this is exactly where the market is going to. Dani, do you see any change in the role of agencies in the coming future?
Obviously, the bigger agencies they have to merge to stay alive, like a giant monster that's just like needing to keep, healing itself. And from that, you've seen this huge rise in amazing, small, talented agencies that are a handful of creatives that have big ideas, but they don't know how to, run a full agency. They also don't have the goal of being a huge conglomerate agency. So they're not charging brands 40% overhead. They're not saying, oh, we only do this. Then they're trying to also make sure they can have all of the services. I think you're also seeing brands get smarter about the in-house teams that they're building at the same time, right? Like, because at the end of the day, the brand is going to know themselves better than anybody else. And sometimes when you go an agency, that agency's only going to pitch you the things they know how to do and pitch.
Yes.
There's always going to be a place for creatives, because I think at the same time you have creatives that don't want to be in-house at brands because they want to have variety. But I've recently worked with a lot of great brands like Arc'teryx and others that have really good in-house creative teams that know what they want. And I think that is always a good first step to have. I think that agencies can, sometimes pigeonhole themselves because they have to, the bigger the agency, the more clients they have to have, which means the more stretched their teams are. And that also means that they tend to not have time to come up with stuff that's pushing the boundaries or that's new for you. So I think I've loved seeing the evolution of people getting rid of agencies of record and really like these small agencies coming up and being like, we have an idea, so we're just going to go pitch it to the brand. And, there is plenty of business out there for everyone. And I think if we can treat it that way, and at the same time, like what do we do the best, and who are our clients that we should go after? I think that makes a lot more sense than just trying to like get everyone, but then sell them the same thing over and over again.
Yes, that's a big shift. Yeah, I totally, resonate and understand this is where it's going. Danny, great. It was really interesting. What's the best way to find you and the Ox?
You can find us at theox.co or just Google The Auxiliary Co. And my name is Dani Dufresne. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn anytime.
Amazing. Danny, anything else you want to add?
No, this has been great. I really appreciate it. I have a love for, brands and especially up and coming e-commerce brands. I know the struggle of how difficult it can be and how it can feel sometimes. And I think that there's so much opportunity out there for these brands right now that are getting started to really seize their part of the market.
So thank you so much, Danny. It was really interesting. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the end of this episode. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe so you won't miss any of our future content. Explore Vimeo, the video commerce platform that includes live shopping, shoppable video, and social commerce capabilities. Visit Vimeo at www.vimeo.net. We appreciate your support and look forward for bringing you more valuable insight in our next episode.